Ever wish you could have someone just like distill the most important parts of a book for you, especially while you're on the go?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah.
With mindful moments, nourish your mind on the go.
Yeah.
Buckle up as we take a deep dive into the world of the FBI, guided by Frank Figliuzzi's The FBI Way,
Okay.
all brought to life by AI narration. You ready?
Absolutely, and I think you'll be surprised by what we uncover. Did you know the FBI has a designated survivor protocol?
Oh, wow.
Just like in the TV show, an assistant director is secretly chosen to safeguard the Bureau and its values, even the country itself, in case of a catastrophe.
I had no idea that was real.
It is.
So we're not just talking about catching criminals here.
No.
This book, The FBI Way, reveals a whole hidden code of conduct, a set of principles that guide everything they do.
Exactly. Figliuzzi doesn't just tell stories, he unpacks the why behind the FBI's actions. He lays out a framework of 7 core principles. He calls the 7 C's Code conservancy, clarity, consequences, compassion, credibility, and consistency. These aren't just for law enforcement, by the way. They're relevant for anyone who wants to build a strong organization or even just improve their own life.
Okay, let's unpack these C's.
Okay.
Where do we start?
Well, code is the foundation. Figliuzzi was drawn to the FBI as a kid, fascinated by their strict code of conduct. And that code is reinforced from day one at the FBI Academy.
So it's not just about physical training.
No, it's about building a culture of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this. On day 2 of training, several recruits were gone. They couldn't pass the trigger pull test back in their field offices and got sent home.
Seriously, what's the trigger pull test?
It's designed to weed out anyone with hesitation or tendency to overreact.
Oh.
The Academy instructors were sending a message: no shortcuts, no fudging results, integrity above all else.
That sets the bar pretty high.
And then there's the honor system on the firing range.
Okay.
You score your own anti-targets even when they're riddled with holes. Inflate your score. You're out.
Wow, that's intense.
It's about trust, self-accountability, and understanding that your word is your bond.
Right.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Figliuzzi talks about encountering a very different culture when he was stationed in Atlanta. He investigated 2 state troopers who used excessive force against a black man. These troopers casually used racial slurs, totally unfazed.
So even within law enforcement, there are stark contrasts in values.
Absolutely. It highlights why a strong internal code is so vital, especially when you're facing external pressures that might challenge those values.
Makes sense. And does this code always win out?
That's a great question. Figliuzzi tells the story of the Oconee County sheriff who allowed a business owner to beat up a suspect in custody.
That's awful.
It was a clear violation of civil rights. And here's the thing. This sheriff was popular locally, but the FBI investigated and got him convicted anyway. They didn't let local politics or pressure get in the way of justice.
That's a powerful example of putting principle above convenience.
It also shows the personal cost of upholding this code. Figliuzzi talks about Agent Oliver, who was killed in the line of duty while trying to apprehend a fugitive. Years later, when Oliver's killer came up for parole, Figliuzzi personally flew to Florida to fight against his release.
Wow. That's more than just doing your job.
Exactly. It speaks to a deep sense of loyalty and duty, a feeling of family within the FBI bound by their shared commitment to the code.
Okay, so code is clearly huge. What about conservancy?
Conservancy is about safeguarding the Constitution and American values, not just physical security.
So more than just catching bad guys.
Much more. There's this anecdote about an agent who got fired for lying about using his FBI card to pick up his daughter from daycare.
Really? That seems harsh.
Maybe, but think about it. Even something seemingly small like that can erode trust and damage the FBI's reputation. It reinforces the idea that no one is above the rules and that upholding the law starts with upholding their own internal code.
It's about setting a precedent then.
Precisely. And Figliuzzi doesn't shy away from internal critiques either. He questions former FBI Director James Comey's handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation.
Oh, I remember that being controversial.
Comey publicly stated that no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges against Clinton. Figliuzzi felt he overstepped by making that statement that the decision should have been left to the Justice Department, as is standard procedure.
So a question of respecting boundaries even when the stakes are high.
Exactly. It raises interesting questions about the FBI director's role in politically charged investigations. And that leads us nicely to clarity.
Which is all about clear thinking.
Right, especially in high-pressure situations where emotions can run high. The FBI operates in a world of uncertainty where information is often incomplete. Clarity is crucial for navigating that complexity and making sound decisions. Think about the Nation of Yahweh investigation, a cult suspected of murder and violence. They needed to find the leader's wife, Judith, but she had vanished.
I'm guessing they found her eventually.
Oh, they did. Hiding out in a luxury condo, no less.
Wow.
But it took creativity and persistence. They even used a clever ruse involving the fire marshal's office to gather information.
Clever. So thinking outside the box is part of clarity.
Absolutely. And sometimes clarity means knowing when to stop when a further investigation is driven more by curiosity than genuine need. Figliuzzi describes the white van incident during the Najib al-Azazi terror investigation.
The guy plotting to bomb the New York subway.
That's the one. They spotted him meeting someone in a white van and went on a frantic search, worried about explosives. It turned out to be a dead end.
So a lesson in managing information overload and staying focused on the real objective.
Exactly. And then there's the Elian Gonzalez case, a huge international incident with political implications reaching the White House.
Vaguely remember that. Something about a Cuban boy.
Right, a 6-year-old found clinging to an inner tube after his mother drowned trying to flee Cuba. His relatives in Miami wanted him to stay in the U.S. while his father in Cuba demanded his return. The FBI was tasked with removing Elian from his relative's home and returning him to his father.
Must have been a tough situation to navigate.
It was incredibly charged. But the FBI had clarity of purpose. They knew their role was to enforce the law, even amidst political pressure and public outcry.
Yeah.
They understood what their role was not, which is equally important. The Miami field office refused to participate in a raid on Elian's relative's home, believing it would irreparably damage their relationships within the Cuban-American community.
So a long-term perspective, too.
Exactly. It's about understanding the wider consequences of your actions and prioritizing the FBI's core mission above short-term pressures.
So clarity is about clear thinking, making tough choices, and knowing when to step back. What's next?
Next up is consequences. And this one's a doozy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does consequences mean in the FBI world?
It's about accountability, about drawing clear boundaries and making sure actions have repercussions. Think about this. A Miami FBI agent still on probation drove drunk and killed 2 young men. He got a lenient sentence, only 90 days in jail, but the FBI dismissed him from the bureau.
So they hold themselves to a higher standard than the law sometimes.
Absolutely. It's about sending a message that their code matters regardless of what happens in the courts, but sometimes the consequences aren't so straightforward.
Okay.
Figliuzzi tells this story about a Hamas cell they were investigating. They intercepted a recording of the parents discussing plans to kill their daughter for dishonoring the family.
That's horrible.
It was a horrific situation. The FBI was torn, intervene, and save the daughter, potentially blowing their investigation. Or prioritize national security and let it happen.
What did they do?
They turned the recording over to the local police, prioritizing saving a life, even if it meant potentially compromising the bigger investigation.
So a moral dilemma where consequences clash with other objectives.
Exactly. It shows that sometimes upholding the law and protecting human life must come first, even when it's a tough call.
Okay, this is heavy stuff. Where do we go from here?
Next, we delve into the heart of the FBI, compassion. You might not expect that from an organization known for its toughness, but it's there.
Compassion. I'm really curious to hear about this one.
It's a side of the FBI you don't often hear about. Figliuzzi tells a story about an agent who was caught buying drugs. Turns out his wife was terminally ill, and he was desperate for anything to ease her pain.
Yeah.
He was also struggling to care for their kids with her so sick.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. What happened to him?
The FBI could have easily fired him, but they chose compassion instead. They got him support through their employee assistance program.
So they saw him as a person in need, not just a rule breaker.
Exactly. It highlights how compassion plays out even within a strict code of conduct. They understand that sometimes life throws curveballs, and even their agents need help.
Makes you see them in a whole new light.
And it's not just about their own employees. The FBI's Victim Witness Program is all about sensitivity and understanding, especially when working with child victims.
I can only imagine how tough those cases must be.
They are. Figliuzzi talks about the Innocence Lost National Initiative, a program focused on combating child sex trafficking. Instead of just going after the perpetrators, they work with community groups to provide housing counseling and resources to help these young victims rebuild their lives.
So it's about breaking the cycle of abuse, not just punishing the offenders.
Precisely. They recognize that these kids are victims themselves, often deeply traumatized. It takes a lot of compassion to approach those cases with that kind of understanding.
Definitely makes you rethink the image of the stern-by-the-book FBI agent.
Right. But let's not forget, credibility is essential too. Without it, their work falls apart. It's about being seen as honest, reliable, and impartial, both by the public and within the FBI itself.
So appearances matter just as much as actions.
In a way, yes. Figliuzzi contrasts this with the approach of someone like Stephen Miller, a former Trump advisor known for his hardline stance on immigration.
Right.
Miller often disregarded established norms and processes to achieve political goals.
I remember him being pretty controversial.
Exactly. Figliuzzi argues that this kind of win-at-all-costs mentality ultimately undermines credibility, leading to a breakdown of trust and accountability.
Interesting. So it's not just about achieving a goal, it's about how you achieve it.
Absolutely. And to maintain that credibility, the FBI has a very clear, transparent process for investigating misconduct within its ranks. Everything is documented, every allegation scrutinized.
So they police themselves as rigorously as they police everyone else.
More so even. Figliuzzi talks about Andy McCabe, the former deputy FBI director who was fired for lacking candor during an internal investigation.
I remember that making headlines. Wasn't it politically charged?
It was, but Figliuzzi makes the point that regardless of politics, the FBI needs to be seen as applying its rules consistently and fairly no matter who's involved.
So even high-ranking officials aren't immune to the consequences we talked about earlier?
Exactly. No one is above the code. And that commitment to credibility played out in a big way during the investigation of Miami drug lords Sal Magluta and Willie Falcon.
What was so unique about that case?
Those guys were notorious for trying to corrupt everything and everyone. They had tons of money to throw around.
Right.
So the FBI took extreme measures to protect the investigation.
Okay.
They even searched their own WN agents to make sure none of them had been bribed or compromised.
Wow. Talk about going the extra mile.
Right. It shows just how seriously they take their credibility.
Yeah.
Even the appearance of impropriety could have tainted the whole case. And then there's the story about Figliuzzi himself having to delay a Lufthansa flight because of a potential threat to a foreign dignitary.
Sounds intense. What happened?
Figliuzzi was assigned to protect this dignitary at the Atlanta airport. Intelligence suggested Sikh extremists might attempt an assassination.
Oh, wow.
He arrives at the gate, sees nothing unusual at first, but then 7 men wearing saffron turbans walk in.
I'd be freaking out. What did he do?
He had to think fast.
Yeah.
He called for backup, then went straight to the Lufthansa manager and insisted they delay the flight. He convinced the captain of the potential threat, got the passengers off the plane, and the FBI searched for weapons.
So quick thinking, a bit of guts, and the authority of his FBI badge.
Exactly. The situation underscores how crucial the FBI's reputation is. People trust them to act decisively, especially in a crisis.
It's a reminder that sometimes you have to trust your gut and take charge, even when facing the unknown.
And sometimes those threats come from within.
You're talking about Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who turned out to be a Russian spy, right?
That's the one. One of the biggest betrayals in FBI history.
Wow.
This guy, a high-ranking agent, was feeding secrets to the Soviets and then Russia for over 20 years.
Must have been devastating for the FBI to discover that.
It was a huge shock. And it forced them to reevaluate their security protocols to figure out how someone like Hansen could operate undetected for so long.
Makes you realize that no system is foolproof, even with highly trained and vetted individuals.
Absolutely. But the FBI isn't just about counterintelligence and national security. They also play a vital role in combating corruption, especially within the government.
That's interesting. You don't always hear about that side of their work.
Right. But think about it. They're uniquely positioned to investigate corrupt officials no matter how powerful. Figliuzzi talks about leading the Cleveland Division and their investigation into Jimmy DeMora, the notoriously corrupt commissioner of Cuyahoga County.
Okay.
This guy was running the county like his personal kingdom, demanding bribes and favors in exchange for government contracts.
Sounds like a classic case of abuse of power.
It was. And the FBI went after him hard. They used wiretaps, surveillance informants, the whole 9 yards. It was a complex and risky investigation, but they ultimately got him convicted, sending a clear message that no one is above the law.
That's a win for accountability for sure.
It also highlights the importance of citizens speaking up, of having the courage to report corruption, even when it's risky.
So it's a reminder that fighting corruption is a shared responsibility, not just the FBI's job.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in upholding ethical standards and holding those in power accountable.
Okay, we've covered 6 of the 7 C's so far. What's the final principle?
The 7C is consistency, and it's all about staying true to your values even when the pressure is on.
That sounds especially challenging in the world of law enforcement where things can change rapidly.
Absolutely. Figliuzzi draws on his experiences during the 9/11 and anthrax attacks to illustrate this. Those events tested the FBI's ability to adapt while staying true to its core principles.
Those must have been incredibly intense times for the FBI.
They were. There was immense pressure to act quickly to find answers and catch those responsible. But Figliuzzi stresses the importance of resisting artificial stress, that pressure from external sources demanding immediate results. That can lead to rash decisions and mistakes.
So staying calm and focused is key.
Exactly. He talks about how the FBI established a rhythm during the anthrax investigation, a consistent process for gathering information, analyzing evidence, and coordinating actions, even amidst the chaos.
Sounds like they had to find order within the disorder.
Exactly. They didn't let the pressure dictate their actions. They stuck to their principles and procedures, which ultimately led to a successful resolution.
That's impressive.
And consistency also applies to leadership.
How so?
Figliuzzi talks about the importance of setting a clear example and holding everyone to the same standards from the newest recruit to the director himself.
Leading by example, then.
Precisely. And he emphasizes the need for constant evaluation and assessment of always looking for ways to improve processes, enhance training, and adapt to changing circumstances.
So it's about creating a culture of continuous improvement.
Yes, of always striving to do better, to be more efficient, and to more effectively fulfill the FBI's mission.
This idea of consistency seems particularly relevant in today's world, where things are changing so rapidly.
It is. Figliuzzi talks about the challenges of adapting to new technologies, new investigative techniques, and new ways of thinking about national security. He encourages innovation and creativity, but always within the framework of the FBI's core values.
So it's about finding a balance between adaptability and maintaining a strong moral compass.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of learning from mistakes, of conducting thorough reviews, and of using those lessons to improve and adapt. He encourages feedback and input from all levels of the organization, recognizing that the best ideas often come from those who are on the front lines.
It makes sense to tap into the collective wisdom of the entire organization.
Right. And Figliuzzi also highlights the importance of having a long-term vision, of anticipating future threats and challenges, and proactively developing strategies and capabilities to address them.
So it's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Absolutely. It's about thinking ahead, about being prepared for what's coming, and about ensuring that the FBI has the tools and resources it needs to stay ahead of the curve. And consistency is crucial when working with other government agencies, both domestically and internationally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Must be a lot of different personalities and priorities to navigate.
There are. Figliuzzi talks about the importance of building relationships, of establishing trust and mutual respect, and of recognizing that each agency brings its own strengths to the table. He discusses the complexities of information sharing, of balancing the need to protect sensitive information with the need to ensure that everyone has the information they need. And he highlights the importance of diplomacy and tact when navigating bureaucratic hurdles and personality clashes.
Sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It is, but it's essential for effective collaboration and coordination, especially in today's complex and interconnected world.
Okay, so consistency is about staying true to your values, leading by example, adapting to change, and working effectively with others. That's quite a lot to unpack.
It is, but it's also incredibly insightful and relevant, not just for the FBI, but for any organization or individual striving to navigate today's complex world while upholding ethical standards and achieving meaningful results.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much depth there is to the FBI's approach, how much more it is than just chasing criminals and solving crimes.
Exactly. The FBI way really makes you think about leadership decision-making and the importance of a strong moral compass no matter what field you're in.
And those principles, those 7 C's he outlines, they're not just relevant for the FBI. They offer valuable lessons for anyone in any field who wants to build a strong and ethical organization or simply live a more principled life.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even in a world that's constantly changing and often feels chaotic, we all have a choice in how we respond, how we make decisions, and how we uphold our values.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the FBI way. We hope you found it as engaging and thought-provoking as we did.
If you're interested in exploring this topic further, we encourage you to check out Frank Figliuzzi's book for yourself. We've provided a link in the show notes where you can purchase it.
And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating topics. We're always exploring new ideas and bringing you the most insightful analysis, all powered by the magic of AI narration.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp and stay curious.